Hey guys, it's Brian. Happy Sunday. Hopefully you've gotten the church emails and know that we are preparing to reopen, at least partially. The kids programs are going to work on a little different schedule as we wait for our regulations to take effect. So stay tuned and we'll keep meeting here on YouTube in the meantime. Today we're going to talk about a parable. And as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, a parable is just a story that has a meaning. In the case of Jesus, his stories talk about following him and what it means to follow Jesus. And today we're going to talk about probably not the most famous parable. I think that's the Good Samaritan we talked about last week, but definitely top 5 parable. And that is the parable of the sower, the parables of the soils. This parable shows up in Matthew, Mark, and in Luke. And we're going to be looking at Mark's account of it today. And in this parable, Jesus talks about a farmer. And that farmer goes and he scatters seed. And he's not a particularly picky farmer. He scatters his seed anywhere he walks by. Everywhere he goes, he's tossing seed everywhere. And Jesus tells a story that he casts his seed and it lands on the walking path or the road. And it's snapped up by the birds and the seed doesn't grow. And then he's going and he casts his seed and it falls on rocky soil that's super thin and not a lot of nutrients, and it sprouts up and then it dies. And then he casts his seed and it lands where all the weeds are, the areas he hasn't taken the weeds out, and the weeds grow up and they choke the seed. And then he tells that some of the seeds landed in the good soil and they grew and they had a yield and lots of extra that came as a result. And he finishes his parable and he says, "Him who has ears, let him hear," saying, if you understand this parable, if the Spirit of God has given you an understanding of this parable, then understand it, follow it, and do it. Apply it to your life and follow me that way. His disciples, of course, yes, we understand, yes, the crowd. But Jesus, they ask him later, just so we're all on the same page, can you explain that parable or your understanding of that parable to us so that we can understand it more thoroughly? What's really happening is they didn't understand it the first time and they were confused, so they asked Jesus for an explanation. And Jesus goes and he explains this parable to them. And he says the farmer, the person scattering seed, is someone who spreads the gospel, someone who tells people about Jesus. And they are spreading the good news or the gospel all over. And Jesus says that the seed, that is the gospel, that's faith in Jesus. He says the soils represent people's hearts, the kinds of people who are going to hear about Jesus and how they will receive him. We're going to read a big chunk out of Mark chapter 4 as Jesus goes and explains this long parable. And we'll stop along the way and talk about what each of the soils represents and how we can use them in our lives. So let's start in Matthew chapter 4. We are going to start in verse 15. It says, some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. So some people are like the hard soil, sandy, not but tough, hard, like a walking path you find in the woods or the road outside your house. Nothing grows on the road because the seeds can't get into the soil. They get crushed by cars or people walking over them, or the birds come and they eat the seed before they can take root. And Jesus said that people who are hardened to the gospel, they have hard hearts, they don't want to hear about God, they don't want to hear about faith, they don't want to go to church, they don't want any part of following God. Those people are hard-hearted. They're like the hard soil. And he says, we scatter the seed, but it's not received. Then he goes on. in verse 16, he says, others, like seed sown on rocky places, hear the word and at once receive it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the world, they quickly fall away. Some people are like these rocks. As you can see, there's some little bits of grass in them, but they're all dried up. You guys know if you go outside and dig around here, you find good old Pocono topsoil. It doesn't take very long and you're into nothing but rocks in the ground. And stuff doesn't grow very well, especially when it's hot and dry, because there's nothing in the rocks for the plants to use for nutrients. In the same way, when people hear about the gospel, they get excited. Then the pressures of life come along. Life gets tough, things get hard, and all of a sudden they lose their excitement and their faith in God falls away because they don't understand why these things are happening to them. And they lose heart and they fall away from Jesus. The next type of soil is the weeds. You have here a lovely, or what was once a lovely dandelion, our most popular weed around here. And what does it say about the weeds? Still others, like a seed sown among the thorns, hear the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desire for other things comes in, choke the word, making it unfruitful. So these people, they accept Jesus, but they accept the gospel, they hear the word, they want to be close to Jesus maybe, but then they get busy. And life starts to push in a little bit. Oh, I didn't have time to read today because my favorite show was on. Or, oh, I didn't have time to pray today other than, just a little bit before dinner, just a quick thank you for the food prayer. I didn't really get to talk to God today. Or, oh, well, I can skip church today because there's a football game on. Or, oh, I don't know, I have this thing or that thing. And all these things get in the way of their following Jesus. And they are choked out by just busyness and the troubles of life. Or, oh, why doesn't God fix this situation? He can, he should, but he won't. And so I don't know if I believe in him anymore. And we don't want to be these people and just let life get in the way of following God, or let the pressures of life chase us away from God. God loves us and wants to be close to us, but life happens. And these are people whose faith is weakened by the fact that life has just crowded out all of their following God. And the last soil is verse number 20. Others, like seed sown on good soil, hear the word, accept it, and produce a crop, some 30, some 60, and some 100 times what was sown. Our last soil here, you guys see, is nice, black, rich soil. Almost anything would grow in there right away. It's good soil. It's excited to have plants in it. It is fertile and ready to grow. That's the kind of hearts we want to have. We want to be excited to follow God. We want to be excited to learn about God. We want to know that when we reach out to God, he reaches back to us and he pours into our lives. So this is the soil we want to be. We don't want to be rocky. We don't want to have our faith crowded out, and we certainly don't want to have a hard heart to not listening to God. But we see that the farmer still spreads seed everywhere. So I encourage you, be a farmer too. Be ready to receive what God says, but be ready to share it with everyone. And don't be discouraged if maybe they don't receive it the way that you hoped they would. I love you guys. Hopefully we'll see you in the next couple weeks. And stay tuned for some exciting announcements of what our summer programs are going to look like. God bless.